Life before the diagnosis felt, in many ways, like a perfectly tuned melody, a familiar and comforting rhythm. My name is Mark, and my wife, Sarah, was the vibrant heart of that melody. We lived in Austin, Texas, a city that perfectly mirrored our lives, a blend of laid-back charm and surprising energy. Sarah, with her infectious laugh and boundless enthusiasm, embodied that spirit. She was a graphic designer, a creative soul who could transform a blank canvas into something beautiful, much like she did with our everyday lives. Her energy was legendary. She loved to hike the trails in Zilker Park, her bright red hair a beacon against the green landscape. She'd come home, flushed and invigorated, her eyes sparkling with the joy of movement and nature. Her passion for life was contagious, and it infused everything she touched. Our kids, Lily, who was 10, and Tom, 7, absolutely adored her. To them, she was not just mom. She was an endless source of stories, games, and unconditional love. She was their anchor, their confidant, their first and most important friend. And to me, she was simply everything. We had built a life together, a comfortable, happy existence that, looking back, might have seemed a little mundane to an outsider. But to us, it was perfect. It was our normal. Then came the day the music stopped. The day the world tilted on its axis, and our perfectly constructed reality crumbled under the weight of a single word: cancer. I remember the sterile smell of the doctor's office, the hushed tones, the fluorescent lights that seemed to drain all color from the room. The doctor, a kind but somber man, delivered the news with a gravity that made my stomach drop. "It's cancer," he said, his voice soft but firm. Those 3 words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Sarah's hand, which I was holding tightly, went cold and limp in mine. A wave of shock washed over me, immediately followed by a chilling fear that gripped my heart and wouldn't let go. It felt as if time had stopped, the bustling world outside the clinic fading into an irrelevant blur. All that mattered was Sarah, her pale face, her eyes wide, with a terror that mirrored my own. In that moment, amidst the chaos of emotions, a fierce resolve ignited within me. I squeezed her hand, looking directly into her eyes, trying to convey the unwavering strength I felt, even as my own world reeled. "We're in this together," I told her, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm not going anywhere. We'll fight this and we'll beat it." I meant every single word. And so began our new reality, a brutal odyssey through the labyrinth of cancer treatment. My life, once predictable, became a meticulously choreographed dance around Sarah's needs. My new routine revolved entirely around her. I juggled work, trying to manage my responsibilities from home whenever possible, my laptop perched on the kitchen counter amidst breakfast dishes. The children, Lily and Tom, needed a semblance of normalcy, so I became the primary parent, overseeing homework, bedtime stories, and comforting them when they inevitably sensed their mother's pain, even when she tried to hide it. But the most demanding part was the treatments. Every few weeks, we made the arduous drive from Austin to MD Anderson in Houston, the leading cancer center, a place that became synonymous with hope and dread. The hours on the road, the endless waiting rooms, the harsh fluorescent lights of the treatment bays, it all blurred into a relentless cycle of exhaustion and worry. Yet, through it all, there was a profound current of love and commitment that propelled me forward. Every day became about Sarah, making sure she ate, even when nausea made the thought of food unbearable, keeping her spirits up, finding small moments of joy amidst the overwhelming darkness. I saw her at her most vulnerable, her most fragile, and my love for her only deepened. One particular evening stands out in my memory. We were back home in Austin after a particularly grueling chemotherapy session. Sarah had been violently ill, her body racked with pain and fatigue. I had finally managed to get her settled in bed, the kids asleep in their rooms, blissfully unaware of the silent battle raging just down the hall. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator. It was a rare moment of peace, a fragile calm in the eye of our storm. I sat in the living room, a heavy silence enveloping me, my own exhaustion, a dull ache in my bones. Then, a mundane necessity broke the quiet. I needed to check something on Sarah's phone. Perhaps it was a reminder for a hospital appointment, or I needed to order a refill for her anti-nausea medication. I walked into our bedroom, the soft glow of the bedside lamp illuminating her sleeping form. She looked so small, so vulnerable, her breathing shallow and even. I picked up her phone from the nightstand. There was no hesitation, no sense of intrusion. I knew her password. It wasn't a secret. We had always shared everything, our lives an open book to each other. I unlocked the screen, and that's when I saw it. A notification. A message from an unfamiliar number. My eyes, weary from weeks of worry and sleepless nights, scanned the snippet of text displayed on the lock screen. It was enough to catch my attention. A phrase, a word, something that felt out of place. A flicker of unease, a tiny discordant note in our carefully constructed melody. Against my better judgment, a strange compulsion took hold. I opened the message thread. The first few lines hit me with the force of a physical blow. A cold dread washed over me, starting in my stomach and spreading rapidly through my limbs. My heart began to pound, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. The air seemed to thicken, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't a wrong number. It wasn't a casual text from a friend I didn't recognize. It was much, much worse. The words on the screen, stark and undeniable, painted a picture that shattered the very foundation of my world, leaving me reeling in a silent, agonizing scream. The words on the screen had delivered a brutal, unexpected blow, but the story of Sarah and me, of our life together, began long before that devastating moment. We met in college at the University of Texas at Austin, a vibrant campus brimming with youthful energy and endless possibilities. I was a history major, lost in the annals of the past, while Sarah, with her fiery spirit and artistic flair, was an art student always looking forward, always creating. Our paths crossed, as they often do in college towns, at a mutual friend's party. I remember her laughter, bright and unrestrained, cutting through the din of the music. She had this incredible ability to make everyone around her feel at ease, to draw them into her orbit. Our first date was at a small, unassuming cafe on Guadalupe Street, a place we frequented for its strong coffee, an even stronger sense of community. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. I found myself captivated by her intelligence, her wit, and the way her eyes sparkled when she was passionate about something. She spoke of her dreams of becoming a successful graphic designer, of traveling the world, of making a mark. I, in turn, shared my quieter aspirations, my love for old books and forgotten stories. There was an immediate, undeniable spark, an effortless connection that felt both exhilarating and deeply comforting. It wasn't long before I realized she was the one, the missing piece I hadn't known I was looking for. Falling in love with Sarah felt like coming home. Our wedding was a simple, heartfelt affair, held at a beautiful local chapel, bathed in the soft glow of stained glass windows. Surrounded by our closest family and friends, we exchanged vows, promises whispered, with the full weight of our young, optimistic hearts. In sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer, till death do us part. Those words, spoken with such conviction, resonated deeply within me. I took them not as mere tradition, but as an unbreakable oath, a sacred commitment to stand by her, no matter what life threw our way. We bought a small, charming house in the suburbs of Austin, a place with a sprawling backyard and a giant oak tree that promised shade and shelter for years to come. It was there, within those walls, that we began to build our life together, brick by brick, a foundation laid with trust, love, and shared dreams. We were a team, a partnership, always supporting, always encouraging. The arrival of our children, Lily and Tom, only solidified our bond and deepened the richness of our lives. Lily, with her thoughtful eyes and gentle spirit, and Tom, a whirlwind of boundless energy and mischievous grins, brought an unparalleled joy and, of course, their own set of challenges. Sarah, as a mother, was a marvel. Her patience was infinite, her creativity boundless. She could turn a rainy afternoon into an epic adventure, a simple walk in the park into a treasure hunt. She taught them to draw, to imagine, to explore the world with curiosity and kindness. Our family routines became the cherished fabric of our existence. Weekend trips to Barton Springs, splashing in the cool, clear water. Holiday traditions that grew richer with each passing year. And quiet evenings spent reading stories, their small bodies nestled close to ours. We were a strong, happy unit, a family woven together with threads of laughter, love, and unwavering commitment. Looking back now, with the bitter clarity of hindsight, I try to pinpoint any subtle shifts, any ignored signs that might have foreshadowed the devastation to come. Were there moments when Sarah seemed a bit more distant, a little less engaged? Did she spend more time on her phone, her attention occasionally drifting during conversations? Perhaps there were times over the last year or two when she seemed more stressed, more preoccupied. I remember her sometimes retreating into herself, her usual effervescence dimmed. But I dismissed these observations, rationalizing them away as normal marital fluctuations. Life gets hectic, doesn't it? Work pressure, the demands of raising two energetic children, the general wear and tear of everyday existence. We all have our moments of introspection, our need for personal space. I just figured life was getting busy, that the demands of her job as a graphic designer were weighing on her, or that she was simply tired. I never thought anything of it. There was never a moment, not a single flickering doubt, that made me suspect anything more sinister, anything as profoundly damaging as infidelity. It was the furthest thing from my mind. We were solid, I believed. Our foundation was unshakable. We had faced challenges before, navigated disagreements, and always emerged stronger, our commitment to each other reinforced. The idea that she would seek comfort, or worse, intimacy, outside our marriage, particularly with someone else, was an unthinkable betrayal, a concept so alien to our relationship that it simply never crossed my mind. I had put her on a pedestal, perhaps, seeing her through the rose-tinted glasses of unwavering love and absolute trust. That trust, I now know, was a fragile thing, and it was about to be irrevocably shattered. The initial shock of Sarah's diagnosis, the immediate aftermath, plunged us into a world I never knew existed, a stark landscape of fear and medical jargon. The first few weeks were a blur of endless doctor's appointments, a dizzying carousel of specialists, each with their own set of questions, their own grim pronouncements. There were countless tests, invasive scans, and the agonizing wait for results, each moment stretching into an eternity. Sarah's emotional state was a raw, exposed nerve. She cycled through fear so profound it paralyzed her, anger that lashed out at the unfairness of it all, denial that clung to the hope of a misdiagnosis, and eventually, a fragile, tearful acceptance. She was terrified, I remember thinking, and I was terrified for her. My own fear a constant throbbing pulse beneath my skin. In those early days, I instinctively became her rock, her primary caregiver, her tireless advocate, navigating the complex medical system, asking the difficult questions, fighting for her when she was too weak to fight for herself. Then came the grueling treatment regimen, a relentless assault on her body and spirit. Chemotherapy, a word that once held abstract dread, became a tangible, brutal reality. I witnessed firsthand the devastating side effects. The relentless nausea that stripped her of her appetite and her strength. The agonizing hair loss that stole a piece of her identity. The extreme fatigue that left her utterly drained, barely able to lift her head from the pillow. Radiation therapy followed, adding its own cruelties. The painful burns, the daily, monotonous trips to the hospital, each session chipping away at her resilience. The emotional toll on Sarah was immense. She felt her identity eroding, her vibrant self replaced by a fragile, vulnerable patient. Her once bright spirit flickered, sometimes threatening to extinguish entirely. During those dark months, my own life dissolved into a continuous act of service. I slept on uncomfortable hospital couches, the stiff fabric digging into my back, snatching moments of fitful sleep whenever I could. My hand became hers, a constant anchor, holding it tightly during painful procedures, offering what little comfort I could. I cleaned up after her when she was sick, silently tending to her needs, wiping her brow, whispering words of encouragement even when my own voice trembled with exhaustion. It was during these moments, seeing her, at her absolute worst, her body ravaged, her spirit tested, that my love for her intensified. I loved her even more for her courage, for her fight, for simply enduring. Every act of care, no matter how small or unpleasant, was an affirmation of my vows, my unwavering commitment. My personal sacrifices and struggles during this period were significant, though I rarely acknowledged them at the time. The financial strain was immense. Medical bills piled up, an intimidating mountain of paperwork and debt. I lost countless workdays, scrambling to complete tasks from hospital waiting rooms or during the kids' brief school hours, always feeling like I was falling behind. The emotional burden was a heavy cloak I wore constantly. Constant worry gnawed at me, stealing my sleep, leaving me perpetually on edge. I had to put on a brave face for Sarah, projecting strength and optimism, and for the kids, shielding them from the full weight of their mother's illness. Inside, however, I was crumbling, a raw nerve of anxiety and fear. The physical toll was equally relentless. Exhaustion became my default state, a bone-deep weariness that no amount of rest seemed to alleviate. I neglected my own health, skipping meals, ignoring my own aches and pains, convinced that any personal discomfort was insignificant compared to Sarah's suffering. I tried to lean on family and friends for support, but ultimately, I felt profoundly alone in my primary caregiver role. They offered kind words, brought meals, helped with the kids occasionally, but no one could truly understand the constant, grinding pressure. It felt like it was just me and her against the world, battling an invisible, relentless enemy. Amidst the darkness, there were moments of both hope and despair that punctuated our journey. Small victories felt monumental. A good scan that brought a collective sigh of relief. A day with less pain where Sarah could manage a weak smile. The first time in weeks that her laughter, albeit faint, echoed through the house. These brief respites were like tiny oases in a vast desert, refueling our strength, reminding us of the life we were fighting for. But then came the devastating setbacks. New complications, unexpected infections, bad news from doctors that sent us spiraling back into the abyss of despair. I remember Sarah's face when a new growth was found, her eyes reflecting a profound, crushing hopelessness. Through it all, my commitment remained unwavering. I was her cheerleader, her confidant, her protector. "We're going to beat this," I kept telling her, my voice firm, even when my own heart was a knot of fear. "We're going home, and we're going to live our lives." I believed it with every fiber of my being. My focus was singular, her recovery. There was no room for anything else. No space for doubt, no energy for introspection beyond the immediate demands of her care. Every ounce of my being was dedicated to helping her survive, to bringing her back from the precipice of illness, to restoring the vibrant, loving woman I had married. The thought of anything or anyone else interfering with this sacred mission was simply inconceivable. My world had narrowed to Sarah, her illness, and our fight for her life. And I was prepared to give everything I had. The night of the discovery revisited me, with a chilling clarity that still haunts my quiet moments. I was sitting in the dimly lit living room, the muted glow of the television screen casting long shadows on the walls, while Sarah, exhausted from another round of treatment, was finally asleep in the bedroom. The house was still, save for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant, rhythmic breathing of our children. I held her phone in my hand, the cool metal a stark contrast to the burning dread that had begun to spread through my chest. The screen, once a window to her world, now felt like a portal to a hidden, terrifying truth. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the mounting anxiety within me. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady myself, but the tremor in my hands was uncontrollable. I opened the message thread again, the words leaping out at me with a malevolent glee, each one a fresh stab to my already wounded soul. It was a conversation between Sarah and a man named David. The name itself felt like a foreign object, sharp and alien in the familiar landscape of our life. The messages weren't just casual exchanges. They revealed an ongoing affair, a clandestine world she had built right under my nose, while I was pouring every ounce of my being into saving her. Pet names, sickeningly sweet endearments like my love and sweetheart, peppered their dialogue. They spoke of missing each other, of longing, of a future together that didn't include me or our children, or the life we had painstakingly built. They discussed plans to meet, secret rendezvous cloaked in the mundane language of work commitments or errands. But what truly twisted the knife was the timeline. The messages didn't just hint at a past indiscretion. They explicitly referred to their meetings during her treatment, during the very period I was sacrificing everything for her. There were exchanges that sent a cold shock through me, freezing my blood in my veins. "He asked if I was with her today," David's message read, and she said, "Yeah, he's driving me to chemo. Can't wait till you're here." Another message from David, dated just days after a particularly brutal chemotherapy session, asked, "How was your spa day with Mark? Ready for some real fun tonight?" Sarah's reply, with an emoji I couldn't bear to identify, confirmed their plan. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of my frail, suffering wife, the woman I cradled and comforted, with the woman who was actively planning illicit encounters with another man, using my selfless acts of care as a cover. My immediate reaction was a visceral physical assault. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, trickling down my temples. My hands, already trembling, began to shake uncontrollably, threatening to drop the phone. My breath hitched in my throat, each inhale a struggle, as if the air itself had turned to lead. A profound, gut-wrenching nausea churned in my stomach, threatening to make me retch. Emotionally, I was in freefall. Disbelief warred with a searing, incandescent rage. Betrayal, sharp and agonizing, pierced through me, leaving gaping wounds, and beneath it all, a profound, crushing sadness, a grief so deep it felt like someone had ripped my insides out and left me hollow. It was a kaleidoscope of agony, each emotion vying for dominance, each one more unbearable than the last. I kept seeing her face, pale and drawn from the treatments, her eyes often filled with pain or fear. I remembered holding her hand, whispering promises of recovery, of a future together. And then, juxtaposed against that image, were these messages, these casual mentions of my role as her unwitting chauffeur, her devoted nurse, while she plotted her escapes. She was fighting for her life, I murmured to the silent room, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. And she was doing this. The irony was a cruel, mocking laugh in my head. I had seen her, at her most vulnerable, her most exposed, and I had loved her fiercely through it all. And all the while, she harbored this secret life, this sordid double existence. An internal battle raged within me. Every fiber of my being screamed to confront her, to wake her up and shove the phone in her face to demand answers, to unleash the torrent of pain and rage that threatened to consume me. But then another voice, calmer, colder, reminded me of her condition. She was sick, vulnerable, still undergoing grueling treatments. Would a confrontation now jeopardize her recovery? Would it be seen as a monstrous act, regardless of her betrayal? The dilemma was paralyzing. Could I even pretend everything was okay? Could I continue to play the devoted husband, the selfless caregiver, knowing what I now knew? The thought of feigning normalcy, of touching her, of offering comfort, knowing the deceit that lay beneath, was repugnant. I questioned everything. Our marriage, the vows we had exchanged, the years we had built together. Was it all a lie? Had her love for me been an illusion? Was I just a fool, blinded by my own devotion, utterly oblivious to the festering rot beneath the surface? The sacrifices I had made, the sleepless nights, the emotional and financial strain, they all seemed to mock me now, rendered meaningless by her infidelity. A deep sense of humiliation washed over me, burning my cheeks. And loneliness, a profound, chilling loneliness, settled in my heart. I was surrounded by my family, yet I felt utterly alone, isolated by a secret that was hers, but now mine to bear. The weight of it was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to shatter something, to make the pain stop. But I couldn't. I had to remain silent, at least for now. The conflict tore at me, a silent, internal war that threatened to unravel the very fabric of my being. The days that followed blurred into a surreal haze, a distorted reality where I moved through the motions of caregiving, like a ghost in my own life. Each morning, I'd wake with a jolt of dread, the memory of the messages flooding my mind, and then I'd don my mask of the loving, supportive husband. I'd prepare Sarah's breakfast, drive her to appointments, sit by her side during treatments, all while a silent scream echoed in my head. My heart was a fractured thing, each beat a reminder of the betrayal, yet my hands continued to offer comfort. My voice continued to utter reassurances. It was an excruciating performance, a cruel charade I felt compelled to maintain. In those stolen moments when Sarah slept, or when she was in the bathroom, I found myself drawn back to the glowing screen, a morbid curiosity compelling me to confirm the depth of her deceit. Each secret check of her phone unearthed more evidence, more sickening confirmations of my fears. The messages weren't isolated incidents. They were a tapestry of a sustained, passionate affair. I saw photos exchanged, not explicit, but intimate enough to convey a deep connection. Pet names, inside jokes, plans for a future that was clearly being built without me. Each discovery was another hammer blow to my already shattered soul. I needed to know who this man, this David, was. A quick, discreet search online, using snippets of information from the messages, a company name, a vague reference to his role, led me to his social media profiles. There he was. David Miller, a colleague of Sarah's from her graphic design firm. He was younger than me, impeccably dressed in his profile pictures, with a confident, almost smirking smile. He looked exactly like the kind of man who would sweep a vulnerable woman off her feet. A wave of nausea washed over me as I scrolled through his public posts, seeing comments from Sarah, seemingly innocuous at the time, now recontextualized as part of their secret world. The realization that this betrayal had been unfolding right under my nose, in the very workplace where she spent her days, added another layer of bitter humiliation. I continued to maintain my poker face, a stoic mask for Sarah and the kids. I played the role of the devoted husband, the concerned father, but inside I was crumbling, piece by agonizing piece. Every "I love you," she uttered, felt like a knife twisting in the wound, a cruel mockery of the sacred bond we once shared. Every touch felt like a violation, a reminder of her touch with another man. The weight of this secret, the burden of this knowledge was suffocating. The idea of confronting her burned within me, a furious inferno demanding release. My instincts screamed for immediate retribution, for her to face the consequences of her actions, but then I'd look at her, frail and weakened by treatment, her skin pale, her hair often covered by a scarf, and the logical part of my brain would kick in. I couldn't do it. Not now. It would be seen as cruel, monstrous even, to unleash such a devastating truth upon a woman fighting for her life. I understood, with a chilling clarity, that any confrontation now would not only jeopardize her physical recovery, but would also cast me as the villain in the eyes of others, perhaps even in the eyes of our children. I didn't want to be that monster, even if she had been one to me. So I made the agonizing decision to wait, but the waiting was a form of torture. Each day was an endless battle against my own emotions, a constant struggle to suppress the rage, the pain, the profound sense of injustice. I was living a lie, a meticulously crafted illusion of a happy marriage, and what was worse, I knew she was living one too. The hypocrisy was unbearable. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, my perspective on Sarah began to shift. She was no longer just my sick wife, the woman I was fighting to save. She was also the woman who had betrayed me in the cruelest possible way, at the most vulnerable point in our lives. The image of her as the innocent victim of a terrible disease became intertwined with the image of her as a calculating deceiver. The love I had felt, once boundless and unconditional, began to curdle, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. It was during one of my solitary drives to the hospital, the city lights blurring past my window, that a firm decision solidified in my mind. I would continue to care for her through her treatment. I would honor my vows to, in sickness and in health, but only in the most literal sense. My commitment to her as a patient, as the mother of my children, would remain. But my commitment to our marriage, to her as my wife, was over. I was done. The love, the trust, the partnership, it had all been irrevocably shattered. There was no coming back from this. This realization, though devastating, brought with it a strange sense of clarity, a morbid peace. It allowed me to mentally separate my role as caregiver from my identity as a husband. I was no longer fighting for our marriage. I was simply ensuring her survival for the sake of our children, and because, despite everything, a part of me still wished her well, if only for their sake. With this decision made, I began to plan my next steps, meticulously, secretly. I started to think about what life would look like without her, without us. How would I tell the children? How would I navigate the legal complexities? The practicalities of separation and divorce, once distant and unthinkable, now became my obsessive focus. I started to mentally disentangle our lives, preparing for a future that would be profoundly different from the one I had envisioned just weeks before. I knew it would be difficult, painful, and messy, but I also knew, with every fiber of my being, that it was the only way forward. The man who had entered the hospital that day, full of hope and unwavering devotion, was gone. In his place was a man hardened by betrayal, yet resolute in his determination to protect himself and his children, no matter the cost. My resolve hardened into a cold, unwavering determination. I began my quiet preparation, a clandestine operation, unfolding beneath the veneer of my devoted caregiving. The first step was documentation. Every time Sarah left her phone unattended, every time she drifted off to sleep after a grueling treatment, I would meticulously screenshot the incriminating messages, dates, times, pet names, explicit plans. Nothing was overlooked. These digital breadcrumbs, once a source of agonizing pain, now became my arsenal, carefully cataloged and stored in a secure, hidden folder on my own phone. It felt clinical, almost surgical, to dissect the remnants of her deceit. But I knew it was necessary. Each screenshot was a piece of evidence, a silent witness to her betrayal. Next, I discreetly consulted a divorce lawyer. I didn't choose one in our immediate neighborhood in Austin. Instead, I drove to a different part of the city, ensuring my visits and inquiries remained off the local radar. I couldn't risk anyone finding out, especially not Sarah or our mutual friends and family. The lawyer, a seasoned professional with a calm, reassuring demeanor, listened patiently as I recounted my story, omitting only the raw, emotional details of Sarah's illness. I focused on the facts of the infidelity, the timeline, and the undeniable evidence. He advised me on the legal intricacies, the potential impact of the affair on asset division and custody, especially given the timing of her actions during a period of extreme vulnerability for our family. He guided me on how to proceed, emphasizing the importance of discretion and patience until Sarah was through her active treatment. This was my burden to carry, for now, a heavy secret that I bore alone. Simultaneously, I began to secure our finances. I reviewed bank statements, credit card bills, and investment portfolios with a hawk's eye, understanding the intricacies of our joint accounts and assets. I made copies of crucial documents, ensuring I had a clear picture of our financial standing. It wasn't about greed. It was about protection, about ensuring that I, and more importantly, our children, would be financially stable after the inevitable storm. This felt like a betrayal in itself, to be planning the dissolution of our shared life while still outwardly performing the duties of a loving husband. But her actions had forced my hand. I had to think strategically, not emotionally. The emotional toll of living this double life was immense, a constant gnawing pain that threatened to consume me. I was a man split in two, one half, the dutiful, compassionate husband, tending to his sick wife. The other, a wounded, vengeful strategist, methodically dismantling their shared future. The cognitive dissonance was excruciating. I felt a complex cocktail of anger at her betrayal, profound sadness for the loss of the life I thought we had, and a strange, unwelcome guilt for my own clandestine preparations. How could I plan to leave the woman I was simultaneously nurturing back to health? Yet, the images of her messages, her casual disregard for my pain and devotion, always brought me back to my resolve. In those darkest moments, when the weight of it all threatened to crush me, I found solace and renewed purpose in our children. Lily and Tom, innocent and oblivious to the storm brewing around them, were my anchors. Their laughter, their simple needs, their unwavering love for both their parents, it was a constant reaffirmation of why I had to see this through. I spent extra time with them, reading bedtime stories, playing in the park, ensuring their world felt safe and stable, even as mine crumbled. My determination to protect them from the fallout, to shield them from the ugliness of their mother's choices, became the bedrock of my resolve. They deserved a father who was whole, who could provide them with a stable, loving environment, even if that meant tearing down the family structure we had once known. Then, the day finally arrived. Sarah finished her final chemotherapy and radiation session. It was a moment that had been anticipated, with a mixture of dread and desperate hope, for months. The doctors gathered, their faces etched with professional solemnity, then broke into smiles. They delivered the news. The treatments had been successful. The cancer was in remission. A new beginning, they said. A chance to rebuild, to look forward. I played my part perfectly, embracing her, tears welling in my eyes. Tears of relief, yes, but also tears of profound sorrow for the illusion of a future I knew we would never share. I acted supportive, happy for her, a picture of the devoted husband whose prayers had been answered. The hospital staff, the nurses who had seen us through so much, offered their congratulations, genuinely believing they were witnessing a triumphant moment for our family. It was a lie, a beautifully tragic lie, and I was the lead actor. The weeks that followed were a period of cautious recovery for Sarah. Slowly, she began to regain her strength. The color returned to her cheeks. Her energy levels gradually increased, and the first wisps of hair began to sprout on her scalp. She was still fragile, still recovering from the brutal assault on her body, but she was no longer the desperately ill woman I had nursed for months. She was strong enough. I chose a specific day, a quiet evening at home. The kids were asleep, tucked into their beds, their innocent dreams undisturbed. The house was still, save for the gentle hum of the refrigerator, a familiar backdrop to so many pivotal moments in our lives. Sarah was curled on the sofa, reading, a faint smile on her lips, a sign of her returning health and peace. It was time. I walked over to her, my heart pounding a rhythm of both dread and liberation. I sat down opposite her, taking a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, devoid of the tremor that threatened to betray the storm raging inside me. "Sarah," I began. my voice softer than I intended, but firm with an unspoken finality. "We need to talk." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning, instantly shattering the fragile peace of the evening. She looked up, her smile faltering, her eyes searching mine, sensing the shift, the profound change in my demeanor. The moment of reckoning had finally arrived. Her eyes, which had just moments before held a flicker of contentment, now widened, a dawning comprehension slowly replacing her placid expression. The air in the room, once comfortable and familiar, thickened with an unspoken tension. I watched her, my gaze unwavering, as she set her book down, her movements hesitant, almost fearful. She knew. Perhaps not the full extent, but the change in my tone, the gravity of my silence, communicated enough. "What is it, Mark?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, a tremor betraying the composure she tried to project. I didn't immediately answer. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. My thumb moved deliberately, navigating to the hidden folder, each tap a hammer blow against the fragile remnants of our shared past. I found the first screenshot, a message from David, intimate, suggestive, dated just weeks after her initial diagnosis. I held the phone out to her, the screen glowing accusingly in the dim light of the living room. She took it, her hand shaking slightly as she brought it closer. Her eyes scanned the text, then darted to the date, then back to my face. The color drained from her features, leaving her ashen, almost translucent. Her jaw tightened, then dropped slightly, a silent gasp escaping her lips. "Mark, she started, but the words caught in her throat. Didn't let her speak. I swiped to the next screenshot, then the next. A relentless barrage of digital evidence. Messages discussing clandestine meetings, affectionate emojis, references to our secret. Even a picture of them together, taken in what looked like a hotel room, during one of her supposed rest days from treatment. Each image, each line of text, was a shard of glass, twisting deeper into the wound she had inflicted. Her initial shock gave way to a desperate, frantic denial. "No, Mark, it's not what you think. It was nothing, just a mistake. I was scared, alone, vulnerable." Her voice was high-pitched, laced with a desperation that, a few months ago, would have torn at my heart. But now, it only fueled a cold, hard anger. I finally spoke, my voice low and steady, a stark contrast to her rising panic. "A mistake, Sarah? Is that what you call planning a future with another man? Is that what you call meeting him while I was driving you to chemo appointments? While I was holding your hand through radiation burns? While I was sleeping on a hospital chairs just to be near you?" My voice rose slightly, the carefully constructed calm threatening to crack. "I was right there, Sarah. Every single day. I told you we were in this together. And while I was fighting for your life, you were betraying mine." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her pale cheeks. She looked up at me, her gaze pleading, full of a remorse that felt, to me, hollow and opportunistic. I know it was wrong. I was so lost, Mark. The cancer, it was so terrifying. I felt like I was losing myself, and David, he just made me feel alive again for a moment. It meant nothing, I swear. You're my husband, my family. Please don't do this." She reached out, her hand hovering, but I instinctively recoiled, a visceral revulsion preventing any contact. "Lost," I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Lost? While I was sacrificing everything, putting my life, my job, my sanity on hold for you, you were finding yourself in another man's arms. Don't insult my intelligence, Sarah. Don't insult everything we built." My voice was still calm, but the edge of steel was unmistakable. "I know about David. I know the extent of it, and I cannot and will not forgive it." Her pleas became more fervent, more desperate. "Please, Mark, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll cut off all contact with him. I'll do anything. The cancer, it changed me. It made me do things I never would have done. Can't we just try to move past this? For the kids?" "The kids?" I echoed, the word a raw wound. "You think about the kids now? What about when you were sending those messages? What about when you were planning out your trysts? Did you think about Lily and Tom then? Did you think about the man who was pouring every ounce of his being into saving their mother?" I shook my head slowly, the finality of my decision settling over me like a shroud. "No, Sarah. There's no fixing this. The trust is gone. The respect is gone. The marriage is over." I took a breath, the words I had rehearsed countless times in my head, now tumbling out with an almost detached precision. "I continued to care for you because of my vows, yes, and because, despite everything, I still wished for you to get well, for the sake of our children. But that was my commitment to you as a human being, as the mother of my kids. My commitment to you as my wife, as my partner, ended the moment I saw those messages. I told you we were in this together. You chose to be in it with someone else." I stood up, putting a physical distance between us that mirrored the emotional chasm that had opened. "I have already spoken to a lawyer. It's done. I will ensure you receive proper care for your recovery, and we will co-parent our children. But our life together, as husband and wife, is ending." Her breakdown was complete then. She crumpled into the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably, her body racked with tremors. She begged, she pleaded, she argued, trying to find any leverage, any excuse, any way back to the life she had so carelessly thrown away. But I remained firm, my resolve unyielding. There was no going back. The man who had been shattered by her betrayal was now meticulously piecing himself back together, but she would not be a part of that new mosaic. The immediate aftermath was a bleak silence, punctuated only by her choked sobs. I left her there, retreating to the guest room, the once shared marital bed now a symbol of our fractured union. The house, our home, became a place of unbearable tension, a battleground of unspoken accusations and raw grief. We moved through the days like strangers, communicating only about the children or logistical necessities, the air thick with the unspoken. The hardest part, I knew, was yet to come, telling Lily and Tom. How do you explain such a profound betrayal to innocent minds? How do you dismantle their world without crushing their spirits? I spent sleepless nights agonizing over the words, trying to find a way to convey the truth without poisoning their perception of their mother. My commitment to them, to being a good father, remained absolute. I would protect them, shield them, and ensure they understood that whatever happened between their parents, my love for them was unwavering. But the heartbreak of knowing their young lives would be forever altered by their mother's choices was a heavy burden, a constant ache in my chest. The family I had so carefully built, the future I had so lovingly envisioned, lay in ruins, destroyed not by a cruel disease, but by a deeper, more insidious sickness, betrayal. The divorce proceedings that followed were, thankfully, relatively swift and less acrimonious than I had anticipated, largely due to the irrefutable evidence I had meticulously gathered. My lawyer, a shrewd and efficient professional, presented the screenshots and documentation of Sarah's affair, particularly its timing during her illness, with quiet authority. This evidence significantly strengthened my position regarding asset division and, crucially, custody arrangements for Lily and Tom. While Texas is a no-fault divorce state, marital misconduct can influence the division of community property and, in some cases, custody decisions, particularly when one parent's actions demonstrably put the children's well-being or the family's stability at risk. The court ultimately granted me primary physical custody, with Sarah having supervised visitation initially, a condition that deeply stung her, but was deemed necessary, given the circumstances and her emotional state. Sarah's reaction fluctuated between anger and resentment, particularly when the terms of the settlement became clear. She accused me of being vindictive, of using her illness against her. But my lawyer calmly countered each accusation with the cold, hard facts of her betrayal. Eventually, a reluctant acceptance settled over her. She knew she had little ground to stand on. The final decree was issued 6 months after our confrontation, marking the official end of our marriage. It felt less like a celebration and more like a quiet, somber acknowledgement of a profound loss. Life after the divorce was a gradual, often painful, process of rebuilding. I sold our family home, the house filled with so many memories, both joyous and now tainted. It was too large for just the 3 of us, and too full of ghosts. We moved to a new, smaller house in a different part of Austin, a fresh start in a neighborhood with good schools and a strong sense of community. It was a conscious decision to create a new environment, free from the echoes of the past. Lily and Tom, resilient as children often are, adapted with surprising speed. There were tears, questions, and moments of confusion, but I made sure to be an unwavering presence, a constant source of love and stability. We established new routines, new traditions. Weekend trips to Barton Springs continued, but now it was just me and the kids creating our own memories. Family dinners, once a chaotic symphony of 4, became a quieter, more intimate affair of 3. I focused intensely on healing, for myself and for my children. Therapy became a regular part of our lives, both individual sessions for me to process the trauma of betrayal and co-parenting counseling to navigate the complexities of our new family dynamic. I learned to talk about my feelings, to acknowledge the immense pain, but also to recognize my own strength. It was hard, unimaginably hard at times, but we were getting through it, day by day, step by painstaking step. Sarah continued her recovery from cancer, and to my knowledge, she remained in remission. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she eventually moved in with David, the man who had been the catalyst for so much destruction. I didn't dwell on it. Her life was no longer intertwined with mine, and I harbored no desire for reconciliation or even extensive knowledge of her new existence. Our interactions were limited to logistics concerning the children, conducted through a co-parenting app or brief, business-like phone calls. The intense emotional connection, the shared history, had been severed, replaced by a polite, distant civility. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I gained a profound understanding of trust, betrayal, and my own resilience. The lessons were etched deep into my soul. I learned that love, even the deepest kind, can be fragile, and that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. But I also discovered a reservoir of strength within myself I never knew existed. The man who had once felt like a fool, utterly shattered, had rebuilt himself, piece by painful piece. I don't regret caring for Sarah during her illness. It was the right thing to do, a testament to the vows I had made and the compassion I still held for the mother of my children, even as she was destroying our marriage. I honored my vows, even if she didn't. That, I realized, was a victory in itself. The profound pain of her betrayal was an undeniable part of my story, a scar that would forever remind me of the depths of human frailty and the cost of broken trust. But it also brought with it a strange sense of liberation. The illusion of a perfect life had been shattered, but in its place, a more authentic, albeit tougher reality had emerged. I was no longer living a lie, no longer carrying the crushing weight of a secret. My focus now is entirely on Lily and Tom. They are my world, my reason for everything. I see their resilience, their laughter, their innocent joy, and I know that despite the hardships, we will be okay. They are thriving, happy, and loved, and that is all that truly matters. I've learned that life throws unimaginable curveballs, and sometimes the people you trust the most can inflict the deepest wounds. But I also learned that you can survive, you can heal, and you can build a new, stronger future. To anyone facing similar betrayals, I would offer this advice: honor your own integrity, protect your peace, and never underestimate your capacity to rebuild, even when everything feels utterly broken. It shattered my soul, yes, but it didn't break me. I am stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live a life filled with genuine love and unwavering truth. The past is a shadow, but the future, with my children by my side, is a bright and open road.